And we just, with the extreme weather, the wind, the challenges that come up, those added to it being complex, because a lot of the other rescues that we manage, it may be cold. You always have the conditions on the mountain. Maybe it's very steep or you need ropes to keep everybody safe. But I think the weather challenges on this incident were particularly difficult. Yeah. So the rangers that came in on Sunday and then ended up going to the top of the mountain and spending the night over experienced some pretty severe conditions, even that second night. Yes. That were quite challenging for them.
Welcome to Inside the Line, the Catskills. Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside the Line, the Catskills. And if this is your first time listening, thank you for listening and check out all my other episodes. Tonight, this episode about a tragic incident that happened on Blackhead Mountain back in 2010. I was very nervous for this interview. I hadn't had a sip of alcohol, and alcohol usually calms me down and it makes me a more interactive person. So I might sound a little weird and off in this interview. So I'd like to thank Jeff from the DEC, Captain Nelson, Lieutenant Breigal for this interview. It was a very great interview, very detailed interview, and hopefully we can learn from this incident. I know I did learn a lot from this incident, and hopefully we can get the word out about what could happen in these tragic situations. Thank you all for listening. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Welcome everyone to episode 15 of Inside the Line, the Catskills. Today I am here with Captain Nelson and Lieutenant Breigal from the New York State Forest Rangers. Tonight we have a really interesting discussion about an incident that happened back in 2010 on Blackhead Mountain in the winter. I wanted to bring the Rangers in that were involved in this incident and get a little information from them to educate other hikers, other public people of what happened and what you guys could do if caught in this situation and save yourself and save other people in case this happens to you. Because this was a very big event. One resulted in the death of a hiker. So it's very unfortunate, but we learn from these kind of events and we can hopefully teach and educate about these kind of events. So had them here tonight. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
This is Christine Nelson.
Jeff Breigal.
Excellent. Thanks for joining me, guys. So I'd like to thank our sponsor, Scenic Route Guiding. If you're ready to hit the trails, make sure you take the scenic route. Our guides are here to help you with goals, big or small. Check out the Scenic Route Guiding and Gear Rentals on Instagram and Facebook for more information. Also, if you mention the podcast, you can get 10% off. Use the code word Mountain Line. I'd like to thank monthly subscribers Katrina Weinig, Darren White, and John Comiskey. Thank you very much for donating the show. I don't know, Captain Nelson or Lieutenant Breigal, have you been on any previous hikes? I know you guys are busy.
Previous hikes as in?
Yeah, like, yeah. Like if you've gone on some casual hikes in the past like week or two.
I was on a hike today, as a matter of fact.
Oh, excellent. Where'd you go?
I was down in Barber Brook State Forest in Delaware County.
Excellent. It's somewhere near me.
I haven't been on a hike this week. Unfortunately, now that I'm a captain, I'm in the office more so than I used to be. So a few weeks ago, I went on a hike over to a fire tower over in Dutchess County.
Excellent. Enjoying hopefully everybody is enjoying the weather.
Definitely beautiful.
It's definitely odd. There's a lot of people that really like this weather and a lot of people that want the snow and the ice to come up. So it's really weird. But I have no Catskill news as of yet. Nothing really is happening, but still bring your spikes with you. Remember that. Bring your spikes all the time now till, I don't know, June. 2 extra pounds. Just do it. So let's go right in. I'm not gonna go into the Catskill history tonight. Usually I do a Catskill history, but we're just going to go straight in to the topic of the night, which is the incident that happened in 2010 on Blackhead Mountain. So I'm here with Captain Nelson and Lieutenant Breigal, and we are going to discuss about what happened and from their perspective, what happened. But I'd like to welcome Ranger Nelson and Lieutenant Breigal. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Doing good.
It's an excellent day.
Yeah. So maybe one of you can go and one of you can other go. A little bit background about yourself, where you lived, how long you've been a ranger and stuff like that.
It's Jeff Breigal. Yeah, I've been a ranger for 21 years. Grew up in the Windham area, Greene County. Prior to being a ranger, I had a multitude of different jobs in surveying, landscaping, forestry technician. Became a ranger in 2000. I worked again. I started in Delaware County, then I was transferred to Greene County, and now I'm actually supervising forester or supervising ranger in Delaware, Otsego, Schoharie, and Montgomery County in Region 4.
Excellent. My area. So you're all over my area. That's great. I live in Oneonta. So Captain Nelson, how about you?
So I've been a forest ranger since 2002, so almost 20 years. It will be in January. I started out in Delaware County as a ranger, and then I transferred to Greene County in 2007. So before I was a forest ranger, I worked for the state in a previous capacity as coastal resource specialist. And prior to that, I worked on Cape Cod as a natural resource officer. So when I came to the forest rangers in 2002, I spent a lot of time in the forest preserve down in lower Delaware County and the western part of the county. And then originally when I came to Greene County, I covered the Catskill Falls area. And then most recently, I had the infamous Devil's Path, the Indian Head Wilderness area and the Hunter Westkill Wilderness area. And then in the last 3 months, actually, I took a promotion to Albany as a captain and now work out of central office there.
Excellent. So you guys have been here for a very long time. You're very experienced.
Yes, we both have about 20 years plus experience.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's incredible. Thank you for your service and dedication. Thank you so much. So what made you guys want to become rangers? What was the click that you decided, hey, I want to become a forest ranger, especially in New York State?
Well, I always had an interest in the outdoors. I knew as I grew up through high school, I knew I didn't want to choose a career where I was going to be inside. So, it was one of those things where I started out in the landscaping fields, and then I got into, I went to forestry school, qualified to take various civil service tests. And I became a forestry technician with the state. And actually, prior to that, I worked with the forest rangers in the Catskills as an assistant forest ranger. And that kind of sparked my interest. And I just kept, taking the tests and eventually got in. So I think my love of the outdoors and wanting to be outside was a big factor in that decision.
Excellent. Captain Nelson, how about you?
So I kind of went the same route. I'm actually from Schoharie County. I went to college for a biology degree in the natural sciences. So I took some classes. I knew again that I wanted to be in outdoors, protect the environment. So after college, I ended up working on Cape Cod, protecting piping plovers, and then full-time as a natural resource officer, just working outside, boating, patrolling, hiking. Just love that aspect of the job, not being in an office type setting, protecting the environment. And then I came back to New York, took a couple civil service tests, and the forest ranger fit that position, being outdoors, protecting the environment. And then what also drew me to it was the search and rescue aspect of it, being able to help people. And even with the wildfire, resource management, protecting and improving the environment.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great way to get into it. You just search and rescue. You're basically service for the people. That's awesome. So yeah, you both covered Region 4, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Spent our entire careers in Region 4, actually.
What counties does that cover again? It's Greene and
What's it?
It's quite a large area.
It's 9. There's 9 counties in Region 4. Yeah, 9 counties. So yeah, it'd be my zone covers Zone B is Delaware, Schoharie, Otsego, Montgomery County. Then Zone A is Greene, Columbia, Albany, Schenectady.
Wow.
And Rensselaer County. Yeah.
Wow. That is overload. Excellent. So we're going to thank you guys for for introducing yourselves. And once again, thank you for your service and dedication to the woods. You're the law of the woods, which is absolutely phenomenal. So I'm going to go over quickly, hopefully quickly, what happened on this event that we are going to be talking about tonight. And then we'll get into some questions, some interview with the Rangers about that night. All right. So on March 12th, 2010, two men, one from Poughkeepsie and one from Virginia, decided to hike Blackhead, Black Dome, and Thomas Cole Mountains in the Catskills. Both men were wise and experienced hikers. Forecast showed a significant storms for the Catskill for Friday, March 12th through Monday, March 15th in 2010. They were forecasting up to 5 inches of rain. Then, towards the end of the week, it would change to a mix of rain, sleet, and then heavy snow. It was also forecasted that there would be high winds during this storm. These are called nor'easters. The Blackheads had received up to 7 feet of snow 2 weeks prior, so the trails were difficult to follow due to the snowpack covering signs and even the trail markers. But one of them had hiked this route several times before, so this particular situation was not a significant problem. On Friday, March 12th, both hikers headed to the parking lot at the end of Big Hollow Road. From there, they hiked up to the Batavia Kill Lean-To. Here, they set up camp and stayed the night to the lean-to. They also used their lean-to as a base camp. On Saturday, March 13th at approximately 7:30 a.m., the hikers headed out up the north access of Blackhead Mountain. They left their full packs at the lean-to, but they did bring a small amount of supplies for a day hike. From the Batavia Kill Lean-To, they headed up Blackhead Mountain, summited, then west to Black Dome and over to Thomas Cole Mountain. After summiting Thomas Cole, they retraced their steps. During the day, the storm came in and heavy snow started to fall and the winds picked up to near hurricane strength. This reduced the visibility to a very short distance. It is reported that they can only see 15 feet in front of them. With the snowpack so high and barely any sights of trail markers, they lost track of the trail. They were also slowed down significantly by the wind and snow. They started back up Blackhead Mountain, and due to whiteout conditions, they missed the north access pass that would have taken them back to the Batavia Kill Lean-To. They then started to head down the east side of Blackhead Mountains toward Dutcher's Notch on the escarpment trail. The peak of Blackhead Mountain is 3,942 feet, and it ascended to approximately 3,700 feet and fairly off trail. This location was 1/4 to half a mile south of the summit of Blackhead Mountain. By this time, they were exhausted, hypothermic, and confused. At approximately 9:30 p.m., they called 911 and told them that they were in trouble and needed help. Unfortunately, at that time, they did not know what they were. Part of this confusion was caused by hypothermia in the deep snowpack. This fact would significantly slow down rescue efforts. They tried to tell DEC forest rangers where they were, but statements from the hikers made it tough to figure out where they actually were. They stated that they were under certain trail markers, but it ended up that they were trough-killed completely, nowhere near the trail. That evening, they dug into the snow and tried to build a snow igloo, but they were unsuccessful, which left them still exposed to the elements. Both men huddled together in the snow shelter with a blanket they brought with them. Rangers started the search that first night as soon as they arrived at the trailhead. Rangers continued search efforts all night and into the next morning when teams arrived to replace them. Aviation could not be used during the weather condition. An attempt was made, but the aviation had to turn back to due weather. It was said by a witness who had arrived at Big Hollow parking lot around 10:30 a.m. that day and stated that the wind had suddenly picked up from 30 miles per hour to 60 miles per hour at the base. They described the howling wind as terrifying and scary. They aborted their hike and returned to their car. But for the two men, they already made it to Black Dome and Thomas Cole Mountains, and for some reason, they did not abort their hike. One hiker was severely suffering from frostbite and hypothermia, and the other felt guilty for getting for his friend in such a difficult situation. So he decided to break one of the biggest rules of safe hiking and set out to get his help on own. So at sunrise on Sunday, March 14th, 2010, one set out on foot to get help for his friend. Due to frostbite on his hands and feet, he was unable to put his snowshoes back on. Being hypothermic, this seriously clouded his good judgment. He left the attempted snow shelter without his snowshoes, and with snow being over 7 feet, he did not get very far. 10 DEC forest rangers were on their first operational period overnight. More would join later. Hennesville Fire Department, search and rescue from New York and New Jersey, state police, sheriffs, Wyndham's Police Department, and ECOs participated in their search. They swept the trails looking for their men. Very difficult weather conditions seriously hampered the search, and it was very slow going. The fresh snow and wind drifts hampered the detectability of the hikers. Also, the weather did not allow for aviation, would have changed the search completely. Around 8:55 p.m., rescuers found one of the men on the southern side of the mountain in an attempted snow igloo. Due to the lateness of the day and one of the hiker's severe conditions, rescuers gave the man a change of clothes, hot beverages, food, and basic first aid, and set up shelter for the night. The man's legs were too cold to walk, so they set up a tent so they can get him warmed up. On Monday morning, March 15, 2010, rescuers and one hiker set out to leave Blackhead Mountain. At that time, the one hiker had gained strength and was able to walk down by himself. He arrived at the trailhead that morning, and luckily the hiker did not need medical help. Rescuers had a hard time finding the other hiker. They used pinging of the cell phone to locate them. When they finally did reach him, he had already passed away. The deceased hiker was found only 200 feet from the original attempted snow shelter. He passed away just south of the summit of Blackhead Mountain, and he died of hypothermia. According to Search and Rescue and DEC, this rescue was exceedingly difficult and prolonged. The conditions were described as horrific. That's why we have Captain Nelson and Lieutenant Breigal here from the New York State Forest Rangers to tell of those horrific conditions and how hiking in bad weather can claim your life and risk the lives of others as well. So that was long. Sorry about that. Longer than I expected. So I guess the big question, of course, is what's going through my head when I first thought of this. What was the thoughts of your guys' head when you got the call that this was happening during these conditions?
Well, to be honest with you, when I first got the call and was responding to this incident, I really did. I wasn't aware of the severity of this condition that the storm had brought in that night. And of course, on the way to the incident, I was thinking more of strategy and, of course, trying to decide what type of resources I was going to need. At the time, I knew I had 2 other rangers responding. And, initially this sounded to me like it was going to be a routine type call, like we have a lot in the Catskills. But when I got into Big Hollow that night, we had to have a snowplow from the town of Windham come in and kind of clear out a spot for the fire trucks and for the ranger vehicles. And then when I got 2 rangers on the trail, that's when I started to get reports back from them via radio that the weather conditions were terrible and dangerous also. So, when initially I didn't realize how bad the conditions were. And of course, getting back to the original question, my first thoughts when I got this call was mainly thinking about strategy and number of resources that I was going to need.
Wow. Definitely it's got to be a tough thoughts to go through of like, oh man, your head's got to be running all over the place. Captain Nelson, what about you?
So because this was in the Windham Blackhead range, that was Jeff's primary patrol area. So it was really his search and rescue to organize and plan for. So the additional rangers that were called were myself, and the Columbia County Ranger was called over, Chris DeCinio. So we were the 3 rangers that responded that night. I remember leaving my house and the roads weren't plowed. I had to use 4-wheel drive. I don't even remember how long it took me to get to the trailhead, other than normally it's like a 15-20 minute drive, and it took a long time to get there. The road conditions were so hazardous. The snowplows weren't even out yet. So just driving to there was very stressful, making sure you were staying on the road and that you were going to get there safely. So Jeff and I live in Greene County, as that was our work area. So we got there sooner, but Chris was coming all the way from Columbia County. So it did take him a while to get there in those road conditions. So we're already starting off in a really stressful situation with having to drive in bad road conditions. And then when we had decided what the plan of attack was, just preparing for that. So based on the conversations with 911 and like the likelihood of where they would be and where we were going to start looking for them.
Wow. So much racing through your head. I can't, especially when you're driving in those conditions, you got to worry about your life instantly and then think about the other guys' lives that are on the mountains.
Mhm.
Wow. I drive a regular car. I go through city things and, we get a foot or two of snow and I'm sweating driving down the road. So I couldn't even believe what you guys are thinking. So, what did you, of course, this is a bigger rescue than, of course, like just going to get somebody that's hurt their ankle. Of course, did you have to pack any more things than you usually do for a regular rescue?
So initially, I just want to say we had the conversation because of when we got to the trailhead and we realized the conditions were so bad, the risk to the rescue or whether we would respond that night or not. We had that discussion amongst the three of us because we realized the conditions on the top of the mountain and the likelihood of finding them and sending us up there and possibly risking our lives. So we did have that conversation amongst us at the trailhead. And ultimately we decided that Jeff would remain as the incident commander at the trailhead for radio communication and contact, and that Chris and myself would go up on the mountain and try to locate them.
And I mean, that turned out when you and Chris went up on the trail, the further up you got, I remember numerous radio communications. I was checking in, and I didn't realize how much your guys, the two rangers that I had sent in, Rangers Nelson and Decinio, I didn't realize how much I was putting them in harm's way until they explained to me what conditions they encountered when they got up on the mountain. And I think the most dangerous part was when you guys come off of Blackhead on that north side. Remember you telling me how you was, you weren't, you couldn't even see the trail. You weren't even, didn't even know if you were on the trail at that point, because you inspected that trail junction where we thought they initially were. You didn't see them. So you decided to head down due to the weather conditions. It was hazardous for us to be there at that point.
So at that point in my career, I'd been on 8 years. Chris had been on 10. He came on with Jeff. So we were pretty experienced rangers. I'd been hiking that mountain. So Chris and I, we consulted about what to bring because we were working as a team, what we would need if something happened to us to keep us safe. And also if we happened to come across the two hikers, how we would keep them out of the weather if we had to stay with them for a length of time. And so what we needed to bring. So we split up the items that we needed to bring amongst both of our packs so that we weren't both bringing the same, duplicate equipment. So obviously we needed snowshoes and warm weather gear, although as we hiked, obviously we would need the ability to shed clothing. It was not overly cold. It was kind of a warmer night, but still snowing. So you get that melting condition. So melting on your gloves, everything getting wet, sweating. So just extra clothing for ourselves and then preparing if we needed to when we came across the hikers to be able to give them a change of clothing, food, hot beverages, a way to make a fire if we were able to warm up, small stove in order to warm up snow and make hot beverages if we needed, a shelter for 4 people in case we found the hikers. We needed to be able to, bring a saw to make a shelter possibly. So those were all the things that we needed to include in our pack that night. In addition to the normal things you need, your GPS, compasses, maps, and lights. So we definitely had full packs when we headed up the mountain that night.
Yeah, being in search and rescue, we have our 24-hour packs, and of course it's heavy as heck, but planning ahead for 2 other people, you have to put more in the pack, and you got to also think about the conditions. Wow, should I carry? Is it going to be colder up top? Should I carry this and that and stuff? Is the snow going to be even deeper? It's God, that's insane.
And unfortunately, with the conditions, we needed the snowshoes because of the depth of the snow, but the conditions on Blackhead in many spots, you really need crampons, which snowshoes don't always provide that level of crampon on the bottom. So also, you need to take that into effect. We ended up actually just using our snowshoes the whole time just because of the snow depth. But in most circumstances, you'd need the crampons too on Blackhead.
Yeah, definitely those steep spots. Even when there's a lot of snow, the wind whips it around and then still creates that ice in the steep spots.
Mhm.
So definitely, wow. So in the beginning, there was you three Rangers, and then I remember you telling me that 10 more came later on to kind of like relieve you guys. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that night, Chris and I spent the night looking, as you said in the opening, that the hikers said on this 911 call that they were underneath a tree with a black and yellow marker. So the only place that we would have two markers would be at a trail junction. So based on that, our plan was to hike up to the juncture of the yellow trail on the north side of Blackhead and the escarpment trail to look for them at basically almost the summit of Blackhead. So That was the plan. And that was why we originally decided that, yes, we would go up that night, because if they are there where they say they are, we want to help them. So we decided that it was worth the risk. So that night it was just Chris and I and Jeff at the bottom. And so through the whole, we went up the red trail on the east side of Blackhead, and just the initial start of it, we lost the trail markers. They were buried underneath the snow. We had to zigzag back and forth trying to look for the red trail. We lost the trail. It took forever. We'd send one person ahead to try to locate markers. And ultimately we ended up we couldn't keep the trail. There was just too much snow. The trail markers were buried. So we ended up just using our GPSs and getting off trail and just shooting to a point and then heading up, hoping to intersect with the yellow trail. And so we just bushwhacked through the woods up the side of Blackhead to hit the yellow trail and then get to the notch, the junction of the yellow blue trail. So it was very difficult. Most of the time we were actually off trail. And then the wind conditions, it was snowing the whole time, and that was just whipping the snow around. So when they say you couldn't see 15 feet, I'd say it was difficult to see 5 feet in front of you at some points. There was just no visibility. So then when we got up to the junction of the yellow and blue trail, and then we didn't find them, it was very disappointing. The wind was howling so much, even if you yelled, your voice just didn't project. We used whistles to try to extend that range. And we just knew that unless they were pretty close to the trail, they would not have been able to hear us with the wind. So our next decision was, well, there's still another blue and yellow junction down near the Batavia Kill lean-to. We thought it was pretty unlikely that they didn't know if they were off of Blackhead, but that was the only other option we had, because at that point, if they weren't on the trail, we weren't going to be able to see them. They weren't going to be able to hear us, even though we kept trying. So we started heading down the north side of that Blackhead. And again, the trail, we couldn't find the trail. We ended up, the conditions with the ice, just sliding down sections of ice snowshoes and just hoping you were going to come to a stop by hitting a tree or something. So it took forever. It was a long process. And eventually we got down to that other junction with the blue and yellow trail for the Batavia Kill Trail, and they weren't there. So at that point, Jeff was arranging for additional resources to come in and relieve us in the morning, because by then it was early in the morning. So Chris and I, once we got to that junction, we started heading out on the Batavia Kill Trail, and then eventually intersected with the next group of rangers coming in. So I'll let him explain that.
Yeah, and the thing is, when I ordered additional ranger resources, they were, it was a weekend, so we're on the weekends, we're only half staffed. So I had rangers coming in basically from all over, as many as I could get that were available, that were working that weekend, from Regions 5, which is the Adirondack region, Region 3, which is like Ulster County. So the ranger resources, and also due to the road conditions and weather conditions, these resources were arriving they didn't all arrive at once. So I had to use one or two rangers as they came in and assign them, give them an assignment to do. And then maybe another hour later, a couple other rangers would come and we had to, re-strategize and decide, a course of action and an assignment for them. And throughout that early morning, in the mid morning, the resources were arriving sporadically. So, we had to, continuously, strategize and decide on where I was going to put these resources. And again, like the Rangers always do on all these incidents, we use each other as intel. There's a lot of times where, I'll tell a Ranger that comes from a different area or ask them, hey, this is what we got. What do you think? What do you think we should be doing? This is, I know the area. I can give them that intel. But as far as situational awareness, things like that, it helps to have a fresh brain or two sets of fresh brains there to give me ideas also. So, and that's kind of how I worked it. And then throughout the day, we were getting Rangers. And then also the following day, I believe was on a Sunday, we got another batch of Rangers coming in.
I always say that even though, Chris and I experienced those conditions up on the mountain, it's almost easier. You have an assignment you have to complete. You bring what you need to prepare yourself. I almost think sometimes it's worse to be the incident commander sitting at the parking lot, having to make the decision, having to come up with a plan, knowing that somebody else's lives are at risk. And it's almost more stressful. I would say it is more stressful because you're the one that's in charge with coming up with the plan and determining how the search or rescue is going to proceed. And that's just a lot of responsibility on a person. So, yeah,
that's a good point, Christine, because when Ranger Nelson and Ranger Decenio came out of the woods after that first night, and they told me what the conditions were like up there, I was very concerned about the additional people that I was actually going to be putting back up on the mountain to continue. And I actually remembered you went back to HQ, got a fresh set of clothes, and you came back to the incident. Mm-hmm. I was concerned about, when additional resources did start showing up, that I was going to be putting these people, my coworkers, in this harm's way again. I guess the only thing at that point we may have had going for us was the fact that it was daylight. Mm-hmm. But other than that, everything else was like the worst conditions you could think of.
Wow. So that's crazy. Like in my head, I'm just picturing the conditions, and just everything going on. It's just got to be tough from Captain Nelson's perspective and Lieutenant Breigal's perspective, just both of those areas. Physical toughness and then mental toughness, both sides. So it's crazy. So basically the plan was to go up, search to where you thought they were at. Of course, it was crazy conditions, so you had to come back down. And then was the next plan to send another party up to the same spot, or wait till it got better conditions, a little bit better at least?
Well, by the time I started getting additional resources in, it was daylight. So at daylight, I think the initial plan was, as I got Rangers in groups of 2-3 Rangers at a time, I was able to start doing some trail sweeps. Because at this point, once Rangers Nelson and Decenio couldn't find or weren't able to find them the first night, we had to start doing some trail sweeps because, where they initially said they were, obviously they weren't found there. So we had to. And that's a strategy that the Rangers do all the time. We're out at night quite a bit doing searches. And a lot of times we'll search at night, but we'll do the same thing we did at night during the daylight. So we basically redo everything. So like I said before, I guess the one thing I had going for me the next day was the fact that it was daylight and I could start sending Rangers out doing trail sweeps from all different locations. I sent some Rangers in from Colgate. I actually sent a team of Rangers over Blackhead, all the way across, all the way down into Dutcher's Notch, down into the Stork's Nest Trail to do the trail sweep, just in case they were along the trail somewhere where they said they were. The trail sweeps would or should have picked them up, but they didn't. But like I said, the one thing we had going for us the next day was the fact that it was daylight and we could start doing some trail sweeps and getting rangers out on the trails.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to mention that the initial night, the 911, when someone calls in, we encourage them to call 911 because they often can get a GPS ping coordinate from the phone from the 911 call. So when they called 911, one of the hikers, the GPS coordinate went to like miles away from anywhere near Blackhead. So we knew that it was not accurate. And that happens when they don't have great cell service. So we could not use that coordinate in order to search for them, which in a lot of instances, it's very helpful for us. So that was no good that night. So the next morning when the additional rangers were sent in too, with all the snowfall that occurred over the night, obviously my tracks were gone, Ranger DeCinio's tracks were gone. So they were really starting new. And also because we could only see maybe 5 feet in front of us, maybe 10 at the most, searching in the daylight provided them with a lot more visibility, and also the snow had let off. So that gave them some extra visibility into off trail. Maybe if the hikers were just off trail or could hear them yelling during the day, the wind wasn't so bad. But even the next day, the wind was pretty significant. So
yeah. And I think that daylight too, that it's safe. It's safer to search in the daylight.
Oh yeah.
Especially during those conditions. But yeah, it's definitely, I was that night, I was glad to see the daylight show up because again, we could get out there when it was light and really, start just, hitting the trails with rangers to, start trying to isolate where these two individuals were.
Yeah. Wow. And the thing of the daylight also, hiking at night with that headlamp on just throws the snow right in your face. You look one way, you look the other way, snow is still there. So it's definitely a lot easier to hike during the day, and you might catch something you might not even nearly see at night with the snow falling like that. So that's a good thing. So Lieutenant Breigal, I know what incident command is, being from search and rescue. That is a tough spot. Definitely tough because, like you said before, you are almost making the decisions of what the other rangers have to do, and you're shaken because you're putting their lives at risk. Could you explain to the listeners who are not familiar with incident command what incident command is?
Well, incident command is basically a system that we use for managing our resources, and incident command or incident commander is the an incident commander on an incident is the one in charge, the one that's going to be making the decisions as far as resources. They have people under them that do planning, that do strategy, operations. That would be like an operations plan. So, and of course, we're mandated by New York State to do this particular. It's our ICS system, and we train. Also, we train, and on the job training we get. Gives us the expertise to implement this incident command system when we do have incidents. You may have a simple overdue hiker where incident command, all your resources are organized from the hood of a truck, or you may have a complex system or a complex incident like we had, where you actually have to go and set up a command post at a firehouse, start organizing resources through your different sections of the ICS system. And it's basically a system where we can organize our resources throughout a whole incident from the beginning to the end.
Being on a 24-hour search mock drill, I've seen the stuff that goes on with incident command, and it is high flowing back and forth, questions here and there, directions here and there. It's got to be tough.
Well, it's a structure that's in place, so it gives everybody a job. So it's there to manage large scale incidents or medium size, but then everybody has a role. So they're there to complement each other, but also make sure that every part of the incident is handled, from the incident commander at the top all the way down to logistics, which is going to bring in all the resources and everything that you need to support the incident, such as the firehouse. They provided us with food, they provided us with transportation, they provided to get the rescuers to the search. So it's all the way from, the logistics all the way up to the planning, operations, and the commander. So
yeah, and we can plug in. It's not just rangers that we can plug into the ICS system. We can use all different types of resources. Police agencies, volunteer fire departments are vital to our job. And as rangers, as field rangers, a big part of our job during our regular patrol time is to develop relationships with fire departments. So when we do have these big incidents, we can call a fire chief or an assistant fire chief and get resources there, even through the fire department. So, but yeah, the ICS system is there. The rangers, we implement it, but we can plug in whatever resources we need into that, depending on the incident.
Yeah, I remember reading, because I had to do SARTEC last week. I had to take that course. Reading the brackets of the ICS, the Incident Command System, is amazing. And you're right. It takes off a load of one person, have to deal with everything. So it's very smart. That's all I got to say. So I was told, I heard over the internet, and I was told that this was one of the most dangerous rescues in the history of the Catskills. Is this true for you guys in your 20 years experience, even before that?
I don't know if it was the most dangerous. I know a lot of rescues and a lot of searches that we get involved with. We put ourselves in the same type of on the same type of dangerous scale as this one. I think the thing that made this one stand out is the fact that it was a complex incident. It was a multi-day incident, weather conditions, and our own our resources. Some of the rangers in that were, we were being exposed to the elements to the point where some of our guys were beginning to get hypothermic and maybe even get into the same situation as the two hikers we were trying to rescue. As far as dangerous level, yeah, I mean, that Blackhead Mountain, there's, as Ranger Nelson mentioned before, we have icy conditions, but, we also have other places in the Catskills that are similar as far as danger level. If we have to go in during winter conditions, Catskill Falls, we have, Ranger Nelson mentioned the Devil's Path. That's just as technical, I would say, dangerous wise as the Blackhead range.
So I think this one was particularly difficult because, as we said, they were experienced, but even we as rangers are experienced, but you can't control the natural injects that you're going to get from the environment. And with the extreme weather, the wind, the challenges that come up, those added to it being complex, because a lot of the other rescues that we manage, it may be cold. You always have the conditions on the mountain. Maybe it's very steep or you need ropes to keep everybody safe. But I think the weather challenges on this incident were particularly difficult.
Yeah.
So the rangers that came in on Sunday and then ended up going to the top of the mountain and spending the night over experienced some pretty severe conditions, even that second night. Yes. That were quite challenging for them.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you have said so far makes it somewhat terrifying. Like, some of this stuff reminds me of stories I've heard up in the Whites above tree line, and having those kind of conditions come through those balsams up there, come through the trees, nonetheless, has got to be absolutely insane. And then also the point of breaking trail going all the way up to Blackhead, that's not an easy task, not at all. Breaking trail is not an easy task anywhere, let alone going up a 3,900 foot mountain, one of the tallest in the Catskills. So, wow. So what else do we got? So this is one basically for Captain Nelson. Besides, the winter conditions, what other challenges did you face when you tried to rescue them, when you were going to rescue them?
So the second night, I was not on the crew. So we got additional cell phone coordinates. after the initial night, which we did not realize there was a second cell phone. They never used it. So the second hiker was able to call 911, and with his cell phone, they were able to, whether because some of the weather had lifted or just his cell phone was a better connection with 911, able to get additional cell phone coordinates, which Jeff was able to use in sending an additional crew to those, because they were populating on Blackhead, so that we knew that they might be accurate. I mean, maybe not. Sometimes they're off still, but so he was able to send in that other crew to those coordinates, and they were able to locate that rescuer or that hiker. So I was not on that, obviously, from being out the whole night before. I was not put back on Blackhead that second night, but so they were able to locate him. But because it was very late in the night, again, it was dark, they decided that they would have to stay the night with him. And even with what the Rangers had brought up amongst them, they requested additional supplies in order to get them through the night. So I wasn't really part of that, so I'll let Jeff kind of explain that.
Yeah, and we had some of the Rangers that came down from Region 5. They had their cold weather gear kits that they were able to get up there. Some stoves, some tents, some sleeping bags. And like I said before, there were some Rangers that had spent all day up on the mountain. And unfortunately, they had to spend the night too, because we weren't getting the next wave of relief until later that night or early the next morning. So that was a big challenge as far as, we had to keep Rangers in the woods that were ready to be brought out and replaced with a fresh set of legs because of those conditions. So we were able to do that the next day, but unfortunately, that was one of the things that it didn't work as a well-greased wheel on this incident, just because of the circumstances, the weather and Rangers coming in from other areas. We just couldn't get people replaced as fast as we had wanted to. So
I just mentioned that total on this rescue, there were over 30 Rangers that ended up being involved. And they, in the command post, Jeff did make the decision too, that sometimes on search and rescues, we use volunteer firemen, but yes, they all agreed that we needed to call in search and rescue teams, that the fire department volunteers did not have the equipment and what they would need to go up on the mountain. They had supported us in many other ways, but they were not involved in actually going on the mountain and doing any of the search or rescue part of it. So, but that Sunday night, the Ranger crew that found the one hiker, they set up camp, they stayed with him. They provided him with, food and hot beverages to warm him up. He wasn't able to leave that night, so they set up camp. And I did hear, though, that the wind was still enough that they could not have a fire or a stove. So many of the Rangers, even with shelter, tents, sleeping bags, warm clothes, experienced quite hypothermic conditions that night, and expressed how cold it was and how difficult it was to get through to the next morning. So,
yep.
Wow, that's unbelievable. So, how did you actually, I know you weren't there initially with when they found him, but how 200 feet off trail is a significant amount of feet, especially on Blackhead, where it's steep as heck in all directions. How were they found? Would they just you guys doing a grid search?
Yeah, and those cell phone coordinates, because the hiker that called in that Saturday night, no, it was Sunday night, excuse me. We got additional fresh coordinates from that cell phone, as Ranger Nelson mentioned before. Once we got that fresh set of coordinates, we were able to relay those to the searchers on the mountain. They were able to kind of isolate his location, and eventually, I don't recall an exact time, if that's in the report or not. I think it was around 8 or 9 o'clock at night. We did find the hiker, the one hiker that survived the incident. But yeah, like you mentioned, to answer your question, it was kind of more or less, grid searching, just back and forth as best as they could. We couldn't really do a normal grid search like we do on most searches because of the conditions.
I just like to make a note. They were actually further off trail than 200 feet. That's just where the second hiker was found from the initial.
Yeah, that's right.
So they were quite a bit off trail.
Quarter mile.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And with that, with the snowpack and stuff like that, oh my God, like it just, the stuff keeps getting crazier and crazier that you guys had to face that day. Well, those days, unbelievable.
Yeah, it would have been very beneficial to be able to have aviation. Unfortunately, they weren't able to fly because of the weather conditions with the storm.
Mhm.
Normally, we would use the state police aviation and have rangers on board to search the area by air, and they probably would have been able to pick somebody up by sight if they were able to get the helicopter in the air. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. They did attempt once, but had to turn back.
Yeah, and the helicopter could also insert people by cable into the top of the mountain, so they didn't have to hike such a long way in there. We could insert supplies also if you had aviation resources. That's becoming more and more valuable these days, especially with a lot of the incidents they're getting up in the high peaks. And here in the Catskills too, we've used it quite regularly, the aviation resource.
Yeah, especially in the past 6 months, I remember.
Yep.
Once again, that's crazy. Just like, being in search and rescue and the drills that we do with the grid searches and stuff like that. Grid searches, sometimes when you put small clues aren't easy to find. And then you're up there on the side, like I said, of a 3,900 foot mountain with steep slopes, trying to look for a man or two with 7, 8, 9 feet of snow. That's just exceedingly difficult. I can't believe that.
So on Monday, after the first hiker was brought off the mountain, he was able, actually, after being warmed and spending the night, and he was able to gain full use of his legs back, and he was able to hike off the mountain with assistance from the rangers. So that was so beneficial not to have to carry somebody. That was extremely helpful. So the search did continue for the second hiker. Again, cell phone coordinates were used. We continued to now that calls weren't being made to 911 because that second hiker did go out on his own. We weren't getting any answers when we called the phone. The cell phone company uses a resource so they can ping a phone and get a location on the phone. So we were able to use that as a technique to get better coordinates on the phone. As the storm was lifting again, we were getting better information off the cell phone towers. So they were able to come up with a coordinate in the command post and send rangers out to look in that area.
And that, with the help of those pings, that narrows your grid area search down. And that's so helpful. I couldn't imagine how helpful that was.
Right. So they also just started looking outward from where the first hiker was found, knowing that's where they both were at one point, and fanning out from there looking for him.
That's a basic search technique we use.
Right. A grid type search. So they were able to find the second hiker, unfortunately deceased in the afternoon on Monday around 2 p.m. So again, we were still, at this point, Ranger Destinio, who was on the first night with me, I was also on another area doing a search with a crew, and he was on the crew that found the second hiker. And then we had to do the recovery. So that instituted some additional issues. Now you have to take somebody off the mountain.
We had to bring in, additional manpower. I think they hiked in from Harriman on the Colgate side. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were able to get a snowmobile in partways from Camp Harriman on the Colgate Lake side of Blackhead. And, that's how they brought the deceased subject down on the Colgate, on the south side there, Colgate Lake area.
Wow. Carrying out in the litter after a snowstorm is probably no easy task, I would think.
Yeah, no, that's labor intensive, carrying someone in the litter, definitely.
Yeah, and in both instances, we decided that the better way out would be down the backside and not go back over Blackhead Mountain.
Yeah.
So to go downhill is always easier downhill to the Colgate Lake area.
Yeah, I really wish a lot of hikers could experience a litter carry, because they think it's pretty easy. You know, I remember someone saying that like 200 feet with a nice sized person is probably as far as you can go until you have to get replaced. But in the conditions of snow, I couldn't even imagine how short of a time you were till you're exhausted.
Well, we do have equipment so for certain environmental conditions. So we do have sleds.
Yeah, I believe
so which definitely makes it easier so that you can put them in a sled and use the snow to your advantage, and then just have control of the sled and slide them along.
Oh, that's good. Oh my God, I couldn't imagine that. But excellent. Wow. Once again, that is insane that you guys put so much crazy effort into that, and exhaustion is just going through my head right now of how exhausted you must have been. So a question of nowadays I've had always in my head, and this happens all over the world. Do you think that the new technology like GPS, cell phones, personal locator beacons, other stuff like that is giving hikers this false hope that they can do a lot more with the technology that they have? Like, hey, I can summit on this day because I have a GPS. It's fine.
My opinion on that is I believe that technology is great. It helps us out. It can help the hikers out. But I believe some of that technology, a lot of folks are forgetting the basics, the very basics of going on an outdoor excursion, whether it's a day hike or a backpacking trip. I think, the technology is good, but I think folks they're substituting some of the technology, and they're forgetting about just some basic principles. Some of these excursions they go on.
Tech fail. It's dependent on batteries. It's dependent on service. And there's a lot of people out there that use their cell phone as their compass or their app as their trail map.
And their light.
And when they lose that battery, that power, and they don't know how to use without it, it can be a detriment for sure. You have to have the basic map and compass skills to back it up in case that technology fails.
Oh yeah, we're seeing so much stuff. Basically, the one thing is the headlamp, the lack of headlamp.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that's the biggest problem. Is like, oh yeah, I mean it's 4:30, sunsets at 5. I can summit and be back, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, I forgot my headlamp. I'm lost.
Right. And I mean, a headlamp weighs nothing in your pack. People bring backpacks and then they have very few things in them, and they don't have a light sometimes, which it weighs nothing. And it's pretty reasonable to buy these days. And it's just so simple. They rely on their cell phone light. And let me tell you, the battery gets drained pretty fast when you're using your cell phone for a light. So that comes up quite a bit.
Yeah. I have 2 headlamps in my pack, and then I also carry a third like $9 headlamp in case I see somebody on the trail. It's late in the day, and I'm just like, this is $10. I'd rather have it save your life than anything else.
Nice. Or even just the simple thing is having a paper map with you, instead of a lot of people go to our trailheads or use the app. They take a picture of the map, and then if their phone fails or their battery dies, just to have a paper map that you can pull out of your pack and look at and orientate yourself to is so useful.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people don't realize how many junctions there are too. So it's really sad when somebody comes up on a junction, they're just like, oh, where did I come from?
Right. Or where do I want to go? The signs can't explain everything. So it's so useful to have the sign with in addition to the map.
Yeah, the 10 essentials.
A lot of people that call 911 nowadays and explain to 911 that they're lost, but they're on a hiking trail. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So let's next question I have for you guys. Besides on the obvious, which is bailing out on the hike, what are some other things that the hikers could have done that maybe could have increased their chance of survival in that particular event?
Well, I think the one of the first things they could have done was before they even decided to try to do Blackhead, Black Dome, Thomas Cole during and try to do those three peaks during the weather conditions was to figure out a plan B. I think these two hikers were, from my understanding, were, college buddies, and we're going to, camp and spend a weekend in the Catskills, hiking the Blackhead Range. Unfortunately, they picked probably one of the worst weekends, weather condition wise, to even think about going. And they probably would have been better off either just staying at the lean-to and enjoying the company on a nice camp out, or possibly choosing to only maybe do one of the mountains, going in the other direction and doing like the Acre Loop, for instance, which isn't as technical, not as far. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is one of the biggest things they could have done to avoid a lot of that was to have a plan B. There was also, I think, I know we interviewed, myself and another ranger interviewed the hiker that survived after the incident. And if they had continued on off of Thomas Cole and just kept going on the trail, they would have been a lot closer to being out of the woods than they were when they turned around and decided to go back over the three mountains. And that's where having a map, being able to look at the map, look at the topography, a lot of the maps nowadays have the trails right on them, so they could easily look at a map and say, okay, we're in trouble. We need to get out of here. We're not going to worry about our equipment that we left at the lean-to. We're just we got to get out and get back to safety. So yeah, there was actually quite a bit, I think, to, I don't want to sound too judgmental, but yeah, that's, I think, the two things: having that plan B and just having that general knowledge. I don't know. I know they mentioned that they did hike in this area before, but I really questioned their knowledge of that area, just, looking at the decisions that were made there.
So yeah, and just the fact that they left the majority of their gear and their equipment in the lean-to and took a small day pack with them. The weather was predicted. They continued with their plan because, one of the men was from Virginia. It's something they were planning. They didn't want to change their plans. They had wanted to do this hike forever. So they put that on themselves instead of maybe looking at the weather saying, this isn't the best time. We need to think about, I know we've traveled, the one person traveled a long way, but just realizing that tomorrow is another day and it's not worth your life. You need to evaluate the situation that day as it is. And, when they realized when they couldn't make it back, like they were becoming fatigued, even as they started to turn around, that maybe we need to adjust our plan. But if nothing else, just bringing a day pack when it's middle, winter-like conditions like that, a storm is predicted, and not having the basic shelter or able to find shelter and keep yourself warm in case something bad happens. Because even if the weather had turned out to be, no snow and no wind, it's still snow, it's cold, it's freezing. Say if someone's on Blackhead and they turn their ankle and you have to spend hours there waiting for a rescue, someone to come and get you. Someone has to hike in and get to you. And in the meantime, you need to keep yourself safe and warm. So, heading out in those conditions with just a day pack, even in the event something happens that is unplanned, you need to be able to take care of yourself, take care of your partner. You can't always expect the best conditions always, and you need that backup plan too.
Yeah, I don't even think they had that basic equipment with them in the day pack. The day pack on that type of hike in that at that time of year and in those weather conditions, really you should, if you're going to do something like that, you should more or less have a full pack like you're going backpacking, because you're going to need that type of equipment. You're going to need a sleeping bag, extra clothing, possibly a stove, definitely extra food and water, your map and compass. Those are just some quick things right off the top of my head. But
Mhm.
I mean, I don't even know if they had I don't believe they even had the basic survival equipment with them, as simple as a space blanket in the day pack. So,
And
Wow.
I mean, I had the Indian Head Range and the Devil's Path, a multi-mile hike, and people don't like to change their plans, like their cars at one end, or like in this instance, their pack was in the lean-to. There's no problem with getting out to a road and it's easier to walk on a road and get to the nearest house or make a phone call from the road and get a ride. Even in the Catskills, we have taxis. And to admit to yourself that you need to change your plan and go a different route, you can make it back to your equipment or back to your car, and you need to be flexible and you need to make decisions that they're going to get you out safe.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with both of those points. I don't think I've ever hiked without a full day pack or anything else like that. I don't think I'd ever take the chance of saying, hey, I'm going to leave this here and summit this mountain. Like, anything could happen, especially on those days where it was predicted. So, I mean, it's a very scary thought for me, at least, not to carry what I would need to survive. And of course, other people would need to survive, especially in those conditions.
And I would have to say, in other instances, when we've had to rescue people at other areas or other places, it's been very helpful that other people sometimes come along the trail and they'll assist. They'll have the equipment that they can help and provide to people that are less prepared, but you certainly can't count on that. And I would like people to take away from this that they should plan for every hike to need everything that they need in case of an emergency or unplanned, event where they have to stay for a while, that they have the supplies and equipment they need to stay safe and warm until somebody can reach them, because it sometimes takes, it takes us to respond to the area and hike in to get you. It's not an immediate response. And sometimes people expect you there quickly, and we can only move at the same speed as really how long it took them to get there. So
yeah, exactly. And I was going to say that I'm like, some people think an immediate response will happen, but it takes 45 minutes, maybe over an hour to get to the trailhead, and then you also got to hike up. So once again, don't expect if you're getting a rescue call or something like that, if you need a rescue, prepare to wait a little bit, have stuff on you to keep warm, winter or summer. It doesn't matter. It gets cold at night. So, wow. Excellent points. So I don't think I have anything else. Do you guys have anything that you want to add on to this particular incident that we were talking about today, or anything else in general to hikers?
I guess, and I would just say that if you think you're in trouble and that you need help, it's better to call for help earlier. Don't wait until it's too late and you're past the point that you needed that help. When our numbers are out there, they're at the trailheads, they're online. Our job is to come and help you. We hope that you pre-plan and you bring what you need in the woods, but sometimes you're going to need our help, and we want you to call sooner rather than later, before it gets to be too late. So that's what we're here for, and that's what rangers do.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, thank you. That's great to say. Don't hesitate for help, especially in those type of situations. Don't. And one thing that I brought up with them is in their emails that we talked about, no mountain is worth the right of your life, is the risk of other lives as well. You don't need to summit. The mountains will be there another day. So it's a great point. So thank you once again, Captain Nelson and Lieutenant Breigal, for joining me on this podcast. Thank you for sharing your amazing experiences, and also thank you for your help and service as being a forest ranger in general. Amazing to hear what went on those couple days and on that rescue, and at least you got one person out of there. So unfortunately it wasn't two, but one is better than none. thank you guys for joining me. It's so awesome. I hope you had at least a decent time on this. I was nervous as heck, just to let you know if you can't tell.
No, thank you for your
Yep,
time.
Thank you.
We hope it helps somebody. That's why we did this interview. So that gives them some insight and gives them tips to keep them safe when
Yep.
they're out there.
If hikers have questions about any type of hike or planned event that they want to do, they can always call the rangers and get information too from us. So we can help people out that way.
Yeah. Rangers are very helpful. Just to let you know, don't think they're going to give you attitude. But they also have a lot on their shoulders, but don't hesitate to ask a simple question of, and also online is very helpful. Catskill Trail Conditions Facebook is helpful with the conditions. So if you don't know if to go some certain place when it's too icy or something like that, go to a page online, ask a friend that's local or something like that. So if you don't have the proper equipment, you shouldn't go. So that's always a good thing to check out online. But once again, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this. Like I said, this is all about education, and this I think will be a good educational purpose for hikers in the Catskills and for hikers all around too, because it's a very big event and it could happen to anybody. But thank you guys. I hope you have a good night, and hopefully I'll see you out on the trails sometime. I really want to.
I hope so too. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.